T minus 30 seconds. T minus 20 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Shout out to USARK and all the USARK members. If you don't know what USARK is, do not be ashamed. Simply click on the third link in the description below. Go to usark.org. See what it's all about. See how you could actually protect your own collection whenever legislation might hit your backyard. You just never know. Things are changing constantly in the reptile hobby, and it's good to know when things are creeping up in your area. So shout out to Phil Goss, shout out to Vanessa, shout out to Jeremy, shout out to all the USARK supporters and teammates out there. Cannot wait to see how much we fight this year to keep our animal rights. And if you're not a USARK member, talk to your fellow keepers and just let them know what USARK's all about, and they're here to protect our animal rights. Shout out to USARK and all the USARK supporters.
All right, Trap Talk Reptile Network, the coolest reptile network in the world. This is Christa with the Girls Who Love Reptiles podcast, episode 65. So last week we had Carly on. So what we'd be doing is we're going to switch on off. I'll be on one week, Carly will be on the next week, and kind of bring a little different flair to the episode. And really excited to have her coming on and being a host on opposite weeks. So really excited for our guest this week, Karina. MJ recommended her to me, and then I was looking at her profile. She has a PhD as well and is now in vet school, so we're gonna have a lot to talk about, talk a little bit backstage, have some shared friends from school. So the vet world's a small world, and even the research is even a smaller world. So really excited to get her perspective on breeding and the pet keeping side of things and reptiles, and learn about her research history and all of that. So really excited for the show tonight. If you guys are new here, don't be afraid to hit that like and subscribe notification, hit that notification bell to get notified whenever we go live. And then if you're looking for a Patreon to join, there's the link down below. You'll get tapped into keepers and breeders all around the world. And if you have any other questions, don't be afraid to reach out. So okay, we'll do some of the sponsors here. So of course we got RGI, Rare Genetics Incorporated. So if you're breeding ball pythons, keep track of those sheds, send them to RGI, reach out to see what promotions they have going on with collecting the sheds and getting the information back on that. And then of course we have Brian from SUNDOWN Reptiles. Love his work with the kahua geckos, but he also does the tree monitors and abronia. So again, if you're interested in those species, definitely look him up. He's one of the breeders I really look up to in the game, and a great person overall. So give him a follow and reach out to him if need be. And then of course we got Clutch, so organization system to keep track of all your ball python clutches and breeding. So again, if you're looking for kind of a modern interface, they're always getting feedback from customers and making it the best product that it can be. So if that's something that you're looking for your own breeding, go ahead and reach out to Clutch. And then we'll finish it off with Blake from Blake's Exotic Feeders. He's here local to me in Florida. So if you're into feeding variety like we should be with our reptiles and you're feeding quail, definitely reach out to Blake to get some high quality quail from him. Tell him that Trap sent you and he'll get you set up right. And then with that, I'll bring our guest on and we'll get started this evening. All right. Hey, how's it going?
Hi, I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm super excited to have you. We're just chit-chatting backstage, and I can tell this is already going to be a fantastic episode. So I'm excited to get back into it. How's your weekend been?
It's been good. So I'm up in Athens, Georgia, where we are just on the tail end of the winter storm. So I was a little nervous about our power. It actually went out for like 30 seconds, an hour before we were supposed to jump on. I was like, oh my God, no. But it came right back on. So we're all set. Hopefully we don't have any issues with that, but I can jump onto my phone if we do. So
okay. Perfect. Yeah, my parents they live in Indiana, so I got a few pictures this morning. They got, I think, 10 to 12 inches of snow.
Whoa.
Crazy. So I'm in South Florida. It's actually been the mid 80s both yesterday and today, actually on the hot side, but
Yeah.
that cool front from everybody else will get into the 60s this week.
Yeah, that's interesting. I have some collaborators down in Central Florida, and they were out in the field today, and they found a pygmy rattlesnake, and I'm like, yeah, no, not up here. We only got like half an inch of ice, but I was tuning in a lot to my other friends on Instagram that keep in the area about like, emergency plans if we do lose power, because that's not something that I think about all the time, what I would do with like the ball pythons and everything. And so I just came up with at the end of the day, if I lost power, I'd probably put them all into little Tupperwares and then make a little incubator and a cooler with my battery pack. But I was really hoping I wouldn't have to do that. So far, so good.
Yeah, it's a really smart way to do it. I never thought about that. If you get a big ice kind of ice cooler, you can kind of keep them in there if you probably do that ahead of time. Yeah, just put some heat mat or heat in there. Yeah.
Some people, there's like a special type of shipping heating pack that you can buy for reptiles that they were talking about. Some people were talking about hot hands, but you definitely have to be careful about getting too hot. I have a bunch of heating pads left over from before before I used to like those, and now obviously I think there's a lot of problems with them. But I have a bunch of just backup. So I have a thermostat that I was just going to set it up to like 75 in there so that the geckos and the ball pythons would be happy.
Yeah, it's usually okay, I would say, for a little bit anyways. But yeah, if it's like weeks on end, that'd be tough for sure.
No. Yeah, luckily we should be thawed by tomorrow, but also luckily we don't have class tomorrow. So
oh yeah,
all of our lectures are going to be recorded, so we still have to do work.
Work just at home. I always liked listening to lectures like online. I could stop it when I need to and take my notes. I feel like I could listen a little bit better, grasp information better, because I could stop it, take a break instead of just being in class from 8 to 5. And then by 2 p.m., I'm already kind of dead for the rest of the day.
Yeah, same. I think it's like a double-sided coin with how I like that I can pause and I can kind of slow it down and go at my pace. But then I also like when it's real time, because then I just get it done in that time period. I don't have that excuse to pause and maybe like doom scroll on Instagram or something.
That's true too. That's true too. Yeah.
I definitely learn more when I'm going at my own pace. But
Yep. 100%. So with that, kind of tell us like your background.
Yeah, so I'm currently a DVM PhD student at the University of Georgia. I finished the PhD portion last summer. My PhD was focused on ophidiomycosis, or snake fungal disease, and I integrated a multi-pathogen surveillance methodology to look at co-infection dynamics and just kind of get a better baseline of what other pathogens are circulating in our free-ranging southeastern snake populations. And I did do some more experimental work looking at the effects of immunosuppression on ophidiomycosis using dexamethasone. And so I did my PhD out of the Southeastern Cooperative Wildlife Disease Study, which is a cooperative that works with all of the Southeastern states' DNRs, or Departments of Natural Resources, or their different variety, as it's different per state. But essentially, we serve as a research and diagnostic service for wildlife. And so I've always really loved reptiles, and I've always been really fascinated about the pet trade industry. And going to UGA as an undergrad, I found the most applicable kind of course route for that was through wildlife at the School of Warnell Natural Resources and Forestry. And so I kind of have been taking a spin on the more captive setting by understanding wildlife and like the animals more in their natural habitat. But I do really seek to work more either in the pet trade or in a zoological setting.
Super cool. Yeah, that's really fascinating. What all did you learn from that? From the fungal, both the surveillance and how the dexamethasone worked is pretty interesting.
So I think that, it's like a no-brainer. If a snake has some sort of pre-existing condition or it's immunosuppressed in some way, let's say it's in a cooler climate, then it is more likely to develop a more severe presentation of ophidiomycosis. Or I think it could probably be applied to like all different types of disease processes. There was a study that was published that was very similar to my experimental study, where they infected a group of snakes that were held at the optimal temperature, and then they were held at a cooler temperature. And that study found that the snakes that were in the cooler temperature group were more likely to die and had more severe and deeper fungal lesions. So it's really cool. I think it just kind of gives us that evidence to prove what we already think about these kind of disease processes. It was also interesting to see how the blood cells, like how their hematology responded to the cooler temperatures, as well as the dexamethasone in my study. And so it kind of seems like, I think it depends on like which species, and this is getting too into the weeds, but
oh no, I like it.
So like they mostly have, I mean, I'm sure you know this, but like snakes in general mostly have two main like inflammatory white blood cells, and those are heterophils and azurophils. And it kind of seemed like it was a little different based on the species we were looking at, if their inflammation was more heterophilic or azurophilic, I guess.
Interesting.
But in the warmer and the cooler group in that one study by Kendall et al. Came out of the University of Illinois, the warmer group had more heterophilic driven inflammation, and the cooler group was driven more by azurophils. But yeah, in my study, I just saw like the infected snakes that were not immunosuppressed had a much higher azurophil response to infection, and then the dexamethasone group had like an intermediate response to infection. But they still were able to like kind of overcome the steroids and still have a little fighting capability. But yeah, I mean, just in general, like snake fungal diseases promote inflammation, I guess.
Yeah, that's really interesting with the different types of cells or responses. Is there, they say, any sort of thought on why? Is it like a chemokine response, like down at the cellular level, where for some reason they're being drawn to the area? Because I don't know.
I honestly think it's a little bit more by the species. Like so for my multi-pathogen surveillance project that I did, I sampled about 29 different species in the Southeast, and I tested them for 7 different pathogens. And I did, I looked at that data like more risk factor wise, like species differences, temporal differences, spatial differences. But then I also took blood from all the snakes I could, the snakes that were more than 5 grams and or more than 10 grams. But I also did some hematological trends. And so one of the things that I was most interested with my research too was looking at the dynamics of ophidiomyces, which is the traditional causative agent of ophidiomycosis, and the what we refer to as the invasive snake lungworm, or Reptile orientalis, which hasn't been as relevant, I would say, on the pet trade side of things, is in regard to like maybe including that in like a general workup on our list of things. Like I think ophidiomyces is a pretty common thing that we now think about when we're looking at what infectious things could be at play. But so Reptile orientalis, or RO, has had a lot of really harmful impacts on our free-ranging snake populations in Florida, and it's hypothesized to have spilt over from the invasive Burmese pythons. And there's just, down in South Florida, there's a plethora of things that shouldn't be there necessarily.
Yep. Oh yeah, I've yet to see a Burmese, but I would like to see one.
Yeah, they're cool, but maybe not down there. But so what our research did really show that there are a lot of concerns when we have both of those pathogens at play, and it's really interesting. So Reptile is a hematophagous lung parasite, so it lives in the lungs of the definitive host. And I think with that hematophagous nature, where it's consuming the blood, that comes, I think, with some immunosuppression. And then Ophidiomyces is more inflammatory. And so it's kind of like an interesting dynamic. And I think it's more than definite where a snake might have one or the other and then be more at risk to be infected with a second and then, you know, get into a lot of problems. We had a die-off at one of my sites where we found 8 dead pygmy rattlesnakes in a 3-month period, which is pretty substantial considering we were only going out for a few days each month and we were finding more dead snakes than live snakes.
Wow.
At that time. But this was during like a winter period. So also there's like a lot of theories where like during the winter months where, you know, the temperatures are dropping, the snakes are becoming more immunosuppressed. And so they're becoming more susceptible to disease and like more severity of disease. So, but yeah, we saw some decent co-infection dynamics there. And like of all the pathogens that I did surveillance for, OO and RO, or like Ophidiomyces and Rallotella, were definitely the most clinically relevant in free-ranging snakes. And the one thing with Rallotella that applies to more of the pet trade side of things is that it is legal, I believe, in Florida if you were on public land. So let's say if you were on a public road and you found a snake, you could in theory catch that and sell it. And so we have had a case where someone bought most likely a wild caught banded water snake, and it was shipped to Michigan, and they had bought that as a pet, and it did end up dying with snake lungworm. And so that's another thing to think about when you're buying wild caught animals potentially from Florida, as that there could have multiple different disease processes going on, but Rallotella being an important part. And we definitely want to prevent the spread of that out of Florida. So
for sure, it's very interesting because I was going to ask how this relates to the pet trade. So can theoretically jump species, you think, or do these mostly stay within their same? I mean, I guess it depending on what it is, but can it, you know, try with ball pythons, for example, or have you seen that transmission?
So there was actually a recent paper published by one of my collaborators, Jenna Palmisano. But they did just detect actually RO in, I think, Aldabra tortoises in South Florida. That because, you know, in South Florida, it's a lot more common to keep reptiles outside since those temperatures are a lot more, you know, complementary to their husbandry. And so the thing with RO is that it has a complex life cycle where it the first intermediate host is a coprophagous insect like a cockroach. And then that is consumed by a secondary intermediate host like an anole or a frog. And then those are then consumed by the definitive snake host. And so it's been documented in 19 native snake species in Florida. And I know of definitely the banded water snake case, but also I think there was a case in a captive scarlet king snake that had RO. So I think it's more so on the pet trade side of things. If you're keeping animals outside, there is a concern for these either invasive or native intermediate hosts coming into the enclosure and getting consumed, and then your animal getting infected. Or if you're not buying from a trusted feeder source and you're feeding live, having issues with potential transmission there.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Most people I think would be okay, but then if you're in South Florida, you'd have more of like a issue then. That's interesting with the Aldabras.
It's only so far in wildlife in Florida, and there has been a lot of extensive surveillance throughout the Southeast. We're getting ready to publish a paper where I think there's actually like 1,900 snakes included doing surveillance throughout the Southeast, mostly roadkill. But I think it's mostly like something to think about when you're feeding live insects or live anoles and live frogs. Because if it's frozen, you're killing the parasite eggs, so then it shouldn't be as much of a concern. But I think it's just something to keep in the back of the mind, but especially in Florida.
Especially in Florida, we got all the crazy stuff down here. I've only lived here since July, but I mean, I have friends know this, but I usually see a couple gators in my backyard every couple weeks and black bears. So the wildlife down here,
black bears, Florida black bears. When I was in the field, I'd see a lot of their prints and like
Oh yeah.
and I'm like, I know you're here. I'm not that scared of you guys because like I've heard the Florida black bears are a little bit smaller compared to our more northern populations. But it's definitely something that I've always kept in my mind when doing field work.
Yeah, I have to really be careful on the night before trash day pickup because they'll go through the neighborhood. Because I live in like a pretty, like, yes, it's in the Everglades, but it's like it feels like a little suburban. Like I live in like a little. There's houses all over next to me. I forget the exact word it is, but gated community or whatever. And one time in my garage, and I look at my neighbor's house, I'm like, what is that? I'm like, oh, that's a bear. I'm gonna slowly. My dog tried to jump the fence one time to get one that was a few feet away. So it's pretty.
It's like you're in the Great Smoky Mountains, but the Everglades.
Yep. It's just swampy and hot. So I love it here. But yeah, they're very interesting with all the parasites and wild caught stuff. What are your like general thoughts on pet trade and like breeding, just in like general?
I mean, I love it. Like that's what has gotten my interest into reptile medicine has been from the pet trade. You know, it started off with my leopard gecko when I was like 8 years old, I guess.
Yep.
I think that it's a privilege to keep, and I think we all think that too. And just, you know, having in the back of your mind of keeping good biosecurity measures, but also it's like we got to live our life. It's like I have 8 reptiles, which is not a lot compared to a lot of other keepers out there. But I'm always wanting more. But just, you know, just a thought of maybe buying an animal that has been exposed to something that could come in and like have a, you know, die off of my own collection is really scary. So it's important, I think, to have those things in the back of your mind when you're keeping. But I also think there's a balance to like really good biosecurity, but also still living our lives. So
yeah. How would you, I mean, I kind of have it to where I have a room I can do it in, but do you have any other suggestions for people that are, a lot of us are constantly taking in like animals all the time, building up our collections. Like how would you, I mean, there's probably a million ways this can
I think I'm probably in the moderate range of quarantining. So one of my collaborators is a pathologist at the University of Florida, and he definitely recommends 6 months of quarantine for, I think, mostly snakes. But I think that is a little bit on the higher end, and I don't think that's feasible for a lot of people, depending on what your plans are for that project. I think at least 6 weeks in quarantine, just making sure that that animal is staying clinically healthy, so you're not seeing any signs of disease, like they're eating well, their defecations look normal or their feces look good. There's no like overt like signs of skin disease, and like they're breathing well. There's not like mucus coming out of their nares and everything. So I definitely think that quarantining new animals is really important. And I wanted to plug in the Healthy Trade Institute, which is a new nonprofit out of the University of Tennessee, and it was founded by Dr. Matt Gray and Deb Miller. Their mission is to incorporate healthy trade practices to reduce diseases in the reptile and amphibian trade. And they also do offer now an adoption program, so that they're working to rehouse like animals that need to find new homes. And they have a certification process or a certification program where we are currently building upon a list of pathogens that should be targeted by either taxonomic groups or different species. So, for example, we offer Ophidiomyces ophidicula testing for snakes and Cryptosporidium serpentis testing as well. We're constantly looking at the literature and using clinical cases that some of our collaborators or the experts on the consult team are seeing to kind of inform this pathogen surveillance program that we have. We are looking at incorporating nidoviruses or serpentoviruses, which that brings in some trickiness. And I think that, you know, Dr. Tillis has touched on that in the last episode with MJ pretty well. but serpentoviruses is a very, very diverse group of viruses. It's multiple different genera. And so some protocols to test for serpentoviruses are good for different types of serpentoviruses. And so you could be, I think the most researched and the most like what we really know how to test for is the more Python serpentoviruses, like the green tree pythons and what we're seeing in ball pythons and whatnot. But there are a lot of maybe more subclinical, divergent serpentoviruses and colubrids that wouldn't pop up on an assay that's looking at and was based on more of that Python origin. Yeah.
That's really
but it's scary because he lost half of his collection with an outbreak.
What's the recommended, like, because with being so clinical, it's so hard. I mean, I know some people are testing every several times a year, 3 or 4 times a year, their collections, because one of those are don't always catch it, or it's subclinical, and so it's not always shedding. So I didn't know what your thoughts on that were either.
I mean, when you're bringing in new animals, I think that 6-week quarantine looking for clinical signs is really important, and especially if it's a species that has known to have issues with serpentoviruses like green tree pythons and ball pythons and whatnot. I think it could be really useful to get a PCR with like a choanal swab or a tracheal wash. There are some labs, I will say, that might be better at detection than others. I think University of Florida is always going to be a gold standard with serpentoviruses. So I don't want to say negative about anybody, but there's some people that might offer a PCR panel that either does not have a specific enough gene target for detection, or it's too specific and it's more gauged toward different types of serpentoviruses, so it wouldn't be picking up the other like species or genuses. But for my study, so we incorporated serpentoviruses in our free-ranging surveillance, and what we did is we did a conventional based assay, which is a little bit more where we have a bigger net that we're fishing for less specific gene targets, so we're able to, I guess, detect more because we're using less specificity, but then we have to do more sequencing. And so it kind of increases cost a little bit and slows things down. But I do think that it is best at describing more novel strains. It's challenging.
I mean, with viruses, like we saw with COVID, you can get most of strains and they mutate. That's why I kind of like cancer so much, because it's so difficult. It's the genetic mutations that people don't think about always that change. Maybe people can have the same type of cancer, but due to the genetic mutation, it's going to respond differently to treatment, which I just find extremely fascinating. So super cool. With the program that you were talking about, they're out of Tennessee, right? You said?
Yeah, they're out of Tennessee, but the certification program is really utilizing a great group or a great network of different diagnostic labs. So like University of Florida is a really key lab. The University of Illinois Wildlife Epidemiology Lab is also a really key lab. And like having the Wildlife Epi Lab, it kind of sounds like maybe they don't do more of the pet trait side of things, but I actually do think they process quite a bit of, private collection samples. And then we have Pisces Molecular, which is a really great group that focuses more on fungi, I believe. So, and I think that's mostly it right now, but I could be wrong. There could be more. But mostly we're just trying to like come up with a good list of pathogens by species that we should look for. And it was kind of fun at our last meeting. Like we're talking about crested geckos and new Cali geckos and kind of thinking about what diseases we need to have on our list for them. But there hasn't been a lot of research. I think there's only been one paper that I've seen that's even done like fecal floats on new Cali geckos. And I think some of them had pinworms, which like questionably that could be from crickets, like more of a pseudo parasite. But I'm always interested, like, cause I love the new Cali side of things, and I would love to keep saying that way, where we think about it as like crested geckos don't have any problems. Like, you know, it's like they're not having mass die-offs from nido like some other species are. And so I'd love it to stay that way, since it's now like the fastest growing part of the pet trade.
Yeah. I think that also just wanted to ask your opinion on just research on reptiles in general. I feel like it's so behind everything else, but with you in that space, do you see it growing, or do you see any sort of trends, like more, like we've been talking towards the pet trade? Like, what do you see kind of upcoming with just researching reptiles in general?
I think for the pet trade side of things, what I've seen in research has been a little bit more limited towards case studies. So people just kind of publishing what they've been seeing. I mean, the Journal of Herp Med and Surgery is an amazing journal for staying in touch with kind of all of the things disease and medical treatment wise. But I do think that the pet trade side of things, it could use a lot more research in regards to like us actually understanding like what is out there, what is important, like how do we manage for certain things. There was like a new paper on Nanesiopsis and ball pythons, which Nanesiopsis is really close. So there's a fungal order called the Onogeneles, and there's like 4 main genuses within that group, and they used to be referred to as a CAN-V complex. But those are Amidiomyces, which is the turtle fungal disease, Nanesiopsis, Paranesiopsis, and then Ophidiomyces. And the last 3 are more so squamate specific. So at first we thought Nanesiopsis was like lizards, and Paranesiopsis was kind of both, and Ophidiomyces was snakes. But there was an infection study that was able to infect both a snake host and a lizard host with Nanesiopsis and Ophidiomyces. And it's really interesting that there was a clinical case of Nanesiopsis now in a ball python. And I think that these clinical signs also maybe you could overlook them maybe for like scale rot. And so I think it's important to kind of take that into consideration when you're looking at things in the pet trade, because those clinical signs can be really similar to something like scale rot. But yeah, I think there's just like a lot more out there than we really recognize today. And I actually think that the wildlife side of things has had a pretty big growth since the discovery and the reclassification of ophidiomycosis in 2015. I mean, there's probably now like 150 papers out on ophidiomyces, and it's mostly focused on free-ranging snakes.
Interesting. Yeah, the more we can learn, from the wildlife can transfer more into there's just so much with the pet trade that we don't even know. Anything from like nutrition to how to even keep them, enclosure size, like, there's still the debate with like racks and all that. Are they good? Are they not good? Like, the keepers and the breeders kind of, butt heads over that. And, there's not a whole lot of papers. There's some I know of, but, could be a lot more.
Yeah, I definitely haven't, like, obviously my interests are really in infectious diseases, because I don't know, I guess that's just a wormhole I went down in, and then I did a PhD on it. So.
Yep.
But it's definitely a niche area, and like I was the only person in my department that was doing snake related research, and then we recruited a postdoc that had finished her PhD on snake fungal disease, which was really awesome to have that support. And there were a few other PhD students, like one is doing behavioral research, so I'll look forward to what he publishes, like some of it's like crocodilian like toy enrichment ideas, and
that's fun.
Yeah, it's really cool behavior stuff. I definitely think there's a good amount of behavioral literature out there that I have not read, which could be tied into husbandry. But the nutrition is definitely something that's, I think, starting.
Yeah, that's I think on my last show, I remember they were talking about like freeze-dried rodents where you like put them in water and then they get like craziness. I haven't even heard. I'm skeptical of it, but that was brought up. I was like, I haven't heard about like stuff like that's like wild, like freeze-dried jerky.
I'd like to see if they would eat it.
I don't know.
I have 3 ball pythons. One probably would eat a frozen rodent. The second is, probably in that middle tier. Then I have another one who I swear she just dreams of live rats. And since I only have 3 and, I think frozen thawed is definitely safer. It's not as easy as live. But since I only have 3, the frozen thawed is definitely the way to go for me. But yeah, I have to sometimes reheat it up and really just like beg for her to eat it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have any eggs in my incubator right now, so I just jack the temperature up, and then I just put the rodents in there after they thaw to room temp, and then they get heat up, and I have no issue. I just crank it.
That's nice.
So it's at like 94, 95. Yeah, it gets them warm, and then they just take it instantly. So it's nice. Yeah.
That's great. I try to get them at least with the temp gun to like 110.
Yeah.
Especially the head. But they cool down so fast sometimes. And so like my ball python will strike and wrap, and then she'll just like unwrap and then not be able to find it, kind of, because it's not so warm. It's very, I don't know. We figured she still eats, but it's just like a pain in the butt.
Yeah, they can be picky. One I've had that kind of works, and I got this from my friend Mats. I think he's in Sweden, but they can only do frozen. They cannot do live there. And so like a lot of times with the babies, like he'll pick them up. I don't pick them up per se, but like he'll like have the rodent come under and kind of do this like motion, because they sense it more with like the heat pits versus like coming down. They can't read it, but if you go like up and under, so I do that. And ever since then, it's like I never have really any issues. So you might, I don't know. They can still be picky, of course.
Yeah, no, she is like aggressive at striking. It's like
I see.
She strikes and wraps, she decides she doesn't want it anymore.
Oh, that's super
if you don't touch that, you have a very stinky enclosure the next day.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I have to, if I'm feeding the snakes, I have to know I have to be awake for an hour after, because it's always at nighttime. And I have to be able to check to make sure she swallowed it, because I do bioactive, so I don't want to redo it, because she's going to decide to eat her dinner.
I forgot about that too. Yeah. I've had some, they go not so much now, but before I moved here, they would just go on a killing spree where I did live and they would kill it, but then they would like just not eat it. It was like so annoying. Like I just didn't make any sense. So similar. Yeah. But
I don't get it sometimes, but yeah, that's like the worst. That's why I love the geckos so much, because I'm not out here like, begging them to eat sometimes.
Yep. You walk into your room and you're like, there's a stinky rodent in here, and there's no other smell that's like worse than that. It's terrible.
Yeah. Especially in like a ball python temperature enclosure. It's like an like it's just like full on decon. Like, it was like one time it did happen, and it was like bloated up like a balloon, and it was like the worst smelling thing, and I instantly had to take out everything and like disinfect it, and I felt so bad for her, because she had to deal with that smell all night long. But I'm also like, that's what you get. Like, you wrote it.
They're funny. There's the behaviors. I've learned so much on this podcast with having people on, like just different snakes and their intelligence, like the retics, and kind of like people are moving more towards the animal choosing what to do as far as behavior, which I think is just like fascinating with the tree monitors and all those guys too.
Yeah, I did that with my first ball python, because I had like a lot, it was my only reptile at the time. I had a ton of time to work on that with him. And, he is my most social snake. Like I've taken him to outreach events.
Oh, cool.
And he's been there for like 6-7 hours and never balled up into a ball, like, and never really expressed a lot of like behavioral signs of being too stressed out, like he just handled it. I gave him breaks, of course, but he handled like, a bunch of kids coming up to him and like petting him so well. And so I do think it pays off to kind of, sit there with your animal and, kind of let them come to you, but it's definitely a lot of time. So
yeah, and depends on the individual, of course, too. But
I definitely think I have I have my 3 ball pythons and my 3 crested geckos, and all of their personalities are so different.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I had one person on too that they're actually breeding for personality traits, which I think we're just at the beginning of that, but in the next, I don't know, however many years, I guess it'll be interesting to see how that passes along too.
Yeah, I've had that thought before. Like if I were to like actually get serious about breeding, I think that like my my approach to it would be like a lot of personality breeding, and then also just like general health, and like, you know, if I were to be a breeder, I would have my DVM by then, and then, you know, be breeding a lot and like a sense of like very clinically healthy animals. And
it's a lot of fun too. What are your thoughts on, I see a lot just with my friends and stuff struggling to find like reptile savvy enough vets. Like, what's your general opinion? Like, just not enough of us getting into the reptiles and becoming specialists in that. Is it, you know, just the money? You know, I even since I graduated school, it's changed a lot. Like, you can graduate school and make pretty decent money and not have to do specialization and stuff.
Yeah, so that's been obviously a big thing that I've been looking into the past year. Like, I think my dream is, you know, to be someone like, you know, Dr. Steve Divers or Dr. Stahl up in Virginia, or like whatever in that area. But yeah, I definitely think that there's not enough of people that are specialized and actually educated, because, you know, half of what veterinary medicine in regard to reptile treatment is also knowing husbandry, and that takes a lot of experience and actual interest. And so there are a lot of potential vets that might see reptile patients that don't have that experience or niche yet. But yeah, I definitely think that it's just too incentivizing to do small animal general practice nowadays, because we can make a decent salary right out of vet school and then keep getting bonuses and promotions, it sounds like. And we had a presentation at one of our SAVMA student meetings, and she sees exotics and she was really interested in aquatics. But she said that just to like sustain the lifestyle she wanted, she has to keep seeing like dogs and cats, because those pay, you know, a lot better. People put a lot more money into their dogs and cats, and she's not spending most of her appointment explaining husbandry, because that seems to be like the majority of what she does, seeing exotics in that fashion. So no, it's super interesting. And yeah, my friends get frustrated with it not being able to find a vet. I think there's just a weird kind of time right now. I feel like there's a lot of benefit from doing like CEs, or just giving like local clinics tools that when they do see exotics, like having printable husbandry sheets so they can just give to the client, then they can kind of read it and change what they need to do. I know the ARAV or American Reptile Association veterinarians, I think, something like that. But yeah, I think that could be a pretty good. ARAV has a lot of really good resources. I think they probably have some resources for general keepers too, but also just for exotic vets. But yeah, I mean, I definitely, like, when I'm looking at a vet to bring my animals to, which soon that will not be a thing anymore. I definitely really want to go to people that, you know, are specialized in, like, they only just see, for the most part, exotics. But I just think that there's a lot of compromise for people that do that, unless they make it really big. And they just have a really good location and clientele. So
right. And I think it's also telling people, like, make sure you have a vet, like, before you even get the animal. Like, I know that's like tough, but like, I feel like people also have to make that. I mean, you see it too in dog cat. They'll like get the puppy, and then they're like, oh, but I don't have the money to like get it vaccinated or like anything like that. Like, kind of reverse thinking. So I think people need to be a little more, you know, judicious in their choices of getting a pet. If pet access.
For sure. I mean, getting any animal is gonna come with a lot of responsibilities, both for their medical care and just like general care. And that is, like, you know, we see that a lot in private practice. Like, 1 week I was shadowing at this random clinic, you know, someone had brought in their puppy and it had hip dysplasia, and they didn't have the money to do the surgery, and so we just euthanized. But I'm like, that puppy costs the amount that you would have put in for a surgery. You know, it's like, it's really sad to see those things. But but I do think that the industry's changing, and like, we've had a lot of presentations in our professional skills class on how, you know, people are putting in more money and their time into their dogs and cats now and not having kids.
Yes, our generation especially.
Yeah.
which is
So
wild.
that's a big thing. And so that's, I think, also why that's helped us as veterinarians, like, have more secure and like steady salaries, you know, because before it was like when I wanted to go to vet school, I was fully under the impression that I was going to have 200K in loans and I'd come out with a 75, 80K salary.
Yeah.
You know? But luckily, I think it's changed a good bit since then.
Yeah. I think when I was in school, I graduated in 2021. Holy shoot, that's like 5 coming up. I can't believe it's been 5 years. Wow, time really flies by. But I think when it was like 70 or 80. Well, because I graduated right in COVID time, like it was right where I actually
that's when I graduated undergrad.
So my clinical year was actually during COVID, which was like a wild time. But then you saw everything like really shift immediately after that. And I was going to lab animal residency, so I was set on that anyways. But yeah, I think the whole specialization as a whole is like lab animal has dipped so much. Like hardly anybody is really going into
but it's super important.
Anymore. Super important, and there's a decent amount of jobs. The salaries are pretty good. It's a way better most places work life.
I hear the work-life balance is a bit better than other areas. And I think it's a super interesting place to be if you like, you know, non-domestic species, but you're not necessarily want to going down the more zoo med or exotic route. And I think that I will say there are a good handful of people in my class that really like reptiles and exotics, but they're fully depending on, or they're fully planning to go into a general small animal practice and see exotics. And I think a lot of them, like, you know, will be pretty well set up for that. And in our new curriculum, we actually have, most of the time, we have an exotics lecture that basically takes, so we're systems based now. So like we just finished our urinary section. And it was really cool how, you know, we had our exotics lecture that kind of took everything we were learning in the mammal host and kind of like pointing out those key differences in reptiles and amphibians. And
interesting. That's a way better way to learn it, is by system, I would think, than just having it all jam-packed into like every system into one class. That seems like a way better way to teach it.
Yeah, no, I love the new curriculum. I'm very happy that because I got into vet school in 2020 or 2021, and since I did the DVM PhD route, I did my PhD first. And I'm so grateful that I am doing it now because the curriculum changed, and I think the new curriculum is just so much more intuitive. But yeah, it's like it was really cool because I was at Dr. Mader's CE seminar, like webinar, the other day, and he was talking about how the peritubular capillaries in the kidney are mostly supplied by the venous system, like not arterial. And that's very different from mammals, and it impacts how you give injections, because you can't inject a drug in a snake caudal to the kidneys.
Right.
And I was like, that's really cool. But he was saying that, and I was like, what are you talking about? Like, they're arterial. Like, and then I had my exotics lecture, and Dr. Divers was presenting on how it's venous supplied, and they have a whole renal portal system. And I was like, whoa, okay. Like,
it all comes together now. It's fascinating. I only think had one reptile. It was an elective. We had an exotics elective, and then we had one reptile lecture for that whole elective. So that's how little, I went to Purdue, that's how little we got. So maybe it's changed now. I don't know. But
I mean, I do think that the veterinary field is acknowledging and seeing a rise in exotic cases, because like the reptile trade is, I believe it's like worth half the amount of like the NFL, like, and like I guess like the net profit, it's like the value of the industry is like half the amount of the NFL and like equal to the wheat industry. So it's like it's a multi-billion-dollar industry, and it's like one of the fastest growing parts of the like, you know, companion animal side of things too. So I think that the veterinary field is seeing that, and there's a lot of people that want to do small animal but see exotics, and so I think that is good. And like I think a general person like that who doesn't actually have any like specialized training in exotics, but still is a DVM, can handle a lot of those general intro cases. And then like if things are more serious and need some more specialty, like refer out to a specialist. So that's kind of how all of vet med is now. It's like feel like when you go to GP, a lot of times it's like, if it's not XYZ, I'm going to refer you to an internist. I'm like,
that's what, it's getting, I mean, it's getting more like human med in that sense, where everything's so specialized, which is like really interesting. Yeah. Some of my colleagues are like, if it has to stay here overnight, we're referring it to a different hospital or something like that for more intensive care. So
which everyone's good. We're finding our niches and what we're good at, instead of being like a million different doctors in one person.
I think the medicine gets a little bit better with that too, when you can really focus on, a certain area. It's really interesting. With the reptile industry just growing, I mean, some of these animals are worth, ton of money, depending on the genes or whatever's that, like horse, if not more than a horse sometimes.
And if it's gravid, it could be worth over like 100 or something.
Some clutches, rare now. The market's taking a little bit of a hit just with the economy in general, but it's still, you can still do pretty well. Oh, Marcus had a question. Marcus is in Sweden, but he asked if you've seen the episode MJ How with Dr. Tillis. I responded yes, and then he asked, did you work with him in any sort of way?
So I worked with his PhD mentor. He was one of my biggest collaborators, Dr. Robert Ossoboff. He is, I will say, probably one of the leading people globally in reptile infectious diseases, because like all he does is reptile, amphibian, and fish. So that's all he works with, and he's been a collaborator of mine, but also I view him a lot as a mentor. And so I have a lot of conversations with him, because it's like, for me, like I still need to think about where I see myself working. And he poses a question a lot of like, do I even want to work with non-reptiles? And I think my answer is yes. Like I love animals in general. Like I'm becoming more of a cat person too. So like I think that I could be very happy in a zoo setting. I don't know. I definitely don't think I can work with dogs.
Okay, so not a dog person. Interesting.
They're just too much. Like it's too intense, and they got so many problems and compliance and actual feasibility. I don't know. Dogs are just a lot. But
I have a little orange cat, and ever since I got him, he'll be 3 this year. Ever since I got him, I became more of a cat person. He's like my little soul animal, and I'm like, I don't know.
Perfect. I could write a 10-page essay on cats over dogs.
I have a husky now. I don't know if I'll get a dog. She'll be 12. I got her in my first year of vet school. I got her, so I've had her for forever. But I don't know if I'll get another dog when she goes. We'll see. I kind of like the cats and the reptiles. I can leave for a weekend. They'll be fine.
I like there's not as much like constant need from us. Like with dogs, it's like they need to go out like every 4 or 5 hours, and it's like if I had a dog right now, I'd be driving back to my house and at like every lunch break. It's
yep. I had to do that during school.
But I think that is a cool question. But I mean, Tillis helped with some of my PCRs, so I collected the samples and I extracted them. But I am very much like, viruses are molecularly kind of intimidating to me, so I sent my DNA and RNA extractions down there, and they also helped me a lot with some of my mycoplasma stuff, which mycoplasma is a really interesting in the sense that it's like super important when we're looking at our like testunidae, like our tortoises and turtles, but like it's kind of a thing in pythons, but also like more of like a secondary infectious agent than like a primary disease causing bacteria. And so previously we've been using a lot of the gene targets that were developed for the tortoise species of mycoplasma. And so I had initially run all of my samples with these like mycoplasma gene targets that had been designed like in the 90s by somebody at University of Florida for like mycoplasma agassizii, I think. And that's like kind of what has been done for snake mycoplasmas. And I had no detections. So I was like, okay, kind of makes sense. Like none of the snakes were respiratory presenting, like never really been looked for before. And then I reran them with a different gene target that was more like a specific to the genus target. And I had a 20% prevalence in free-ranging snakes.
Oh,
So
wow.
it was really cool. But I think that my data definitely showed that it was commensal, because like none of the like hemograms showed any like association with detection, and like there was definitely no clinical signs that I saw, like respiratory wise. And it wasn't like associated with like a poor body condition or anything. So like my data like proposes that it's commensal in at least these colubrid hosts in some ways. But
it's interesting. Well, when they're affected with the fungal, then you know those things become opportunistic and all that, which I find interesting too.
But it is interesting too, because it's like, you know, we were talking backstage earlier about how like my kitten I just got, she has giardia. And it's like kind of giardia kind of is everywhere somewhat, but also like we don't necessarily know, because like you don't see it on a routine fecal. But it's like, how do we go about those super prevalent pathogens that a lot of times could be doing nothing, but then either you change its environment and then it starts becoming clinical, or you bring in a different animal into your home and it had been naive and got exposed, and kind of that dynamic I think is a really tough thing to manage with biosecurity and collection.
I mean, we cut, backstage. How about where I work, where we see a lot of that stuff, any sort of fecal, you're going to see it. I treat for it if it's causing clinical signs of diarrhea for multiple. I usually let it go a couple of days. And if they have like just straight up liquid diarrhea, then I'm like, all right, gotta do a fecal. And if I see, depends on the amount I see. If it's just a few, I'm kind of like, but if there's like a lot of them with the clinical signs, then I'm like, I go ahead and treat, but not with the antibiotics. No, it's interesting with like old style vets. They are more like antibiotic minded, and then us newer vets, I'm kind of like, whoa, I will not treat with antibiotics. I have to. It's interesting to change the shift, and I run into it a little bit just because there's difference in like teaching and stuff. But I'm very much like kind of no antibiotic unless necessary type of thing.
I mean, I think looking back too at like our previous topic of like, you know, finding a good reptile vet and like working with it, and I definitely think all keepers should have someone in their back pocket that has medical training that can help them, because I definitely have a few friends that have had sick animals that they manage on their own, and to a certain extent maybe that's okay, but I think it does go a long way to have someone that is trained medically on helping you manage treatments, like not just giving every snake that has upper respiratory disease Baytril, Baytril, because that they do it all the time. Like Baytril can be super bad if you give it, you know, sub-Q, and you get skin sloughing and stuff. So and if it's an adenovirus, it's not going to do anything.
So. This is a big difference. Some people, like some of my friends, will come to me for like advice and stuff like that, and I'm saying that a lot of them will just give it Baytril, which I mean, if it hasn't had a respiratory infection, I'm like but they still gold standards like doing like the wash and culture and sensitivity and all that. But I also had some vets recommending like F10, I think, for like what I was like, well, what even is this? Like in a like
there's definitely not been any research that I've really seen with F10, but I have seen it be used clinically. Like I think nebulizing it to kind of help. I think it's just a general antimicrobial that I guess is safe like for the animal, but I mean my side of like literature and my expertise is more in infectious like surveillance and like that kind of thing. But like I've definitely have heard of it. I haven't seen the vets that I work with use it, but I mean I think it's a good disinfectant. But
good disinfectant. I couldn't find any literature on either, so I was like, I don't know, maybe an old style vet type of thing. I don't know. And it's interesting.
There's a lot. I think there's definitely a lot out there that's in the reptile medicine world that is just not, it's like more of like a word of mouth than an actual like official published thing. But obviously like publishing and doing formal research requires a lot of resources. And like, I was just so grateful to get grants for my research, but it is like, that is like the lay person is like, why do we need to know what snakes outside have? You know, it's like I tell my grandma, she's like, why aren't you working with birds? I'm like, I like snakes.
Yeah, I mean with research in general, it's kind of like a hot topic right now, just in general. Like I had to graduate my PhD a whole year early because of lost funding. I found out in December and had to finish my PhD up in like 6 months because I was going to have no funding after June. So I had, had to do it a year early. So I know that's the really hard thing right now in academia.
I got out of it the second that all started happening. And I was so grateful. I was like, thank God I have, because it's like, you know, my friends who just defended too, like, we're like, I don't know what I'm going to do for work. And I'm like, thank God I have vet school right after this. Like, I don't need to think about this. I hope it all resolves by the time I finish. But that's terrifying. Like, and, like, my husband's parents work for the CDC and they're just on and off of like going into work just on the day.
That's crazy. Yeah, it was a weird. Thankfully, my committee was like fine with me. Like I had done enough work, but like someone else in my lab, like their committee was like, no, you have to have like another published like paper or something like that. So I don't know if she even defended by now or not, type of thing.
It's for graduate school, your whole experience is shaped by your committee. And I'm lucky where my committee was super chill and I don't even know if they read half of my stuff, but they are now for trying to get everything published. And one of them just sent edits. I was like, dude, you had this for a year.
No, mine was super chill thing. But it's like crazy because when you start the PhD, you don't know. Like you're just like, oh, choose 5 people. Like I tell people now because my current boyfriend wants to do a PhD, so he probably starting one the next year or two. And I'm like, so I'm trying to give him like tips and stuff of what to look for. But I'm like, your committee is like.
But you also don't know until you just get into it.
You also don't know.
And it's all about just finding people you work well with and you can communicate well with, because personality types and opinions are just so different.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the biggest struggle with like grad school. It's just like your experience is so different and your challenges are so different and no one else is doing it with you. You know?
Correct. I think that like kind of applies to almost anything too in life, being like amendable, and you don't really know until you get into it. So just being flexible with things.
Yeah, and I've talked to like a good amount of students that are interested in doing a DVM PhD program, and I think the biggest question that committees are looking for you to understand is the difference between a PhD and a DVM in regard to like that lifestyle. And like with vet school, I've definitely have really loved to have like that more of a community that like we're all taking the same tests and like going to the same classes and we all have the same deadline. So that really helps for us to like work together as a team. But the grad school is also really great where you have a lot more leniency. Like maybe one day you're sick and instead of being like, oh my God, I'm going to miss 8 lectures today, you can just work from home or sometimes it depends, but
it's very interesting you doing the PhD and then DVM and then me doing the DVM and then the PhD. Like I thought the PhD was like way easier than like the DVM as far as like it had periods of like high intense stress, but it wasn't like the whole like 4 years like vet school was.
And I think that going into PhD with the DVM training, you already have so much training and understanding, and I think it's like different too. I think like with taking tests now, like my critical thinking has just gotten so much better that I can just kind of see how they wrote the question almost to kind of answer, unless it's like direct recall and I'm like, oh man. But like, and also I think that they've just improved our program so much that it's just been, they've turned the energy from, work hard, like grind, burnout. Like you need to suffer. I suffered in vet school.
That was mine.
I want you to learn. I want you to leave being a better vet. Don't worry about your grades.
Wow.
That's kind of the mentality they've shifted to, because we are on a pass fail system now.
Really?
But we still get grades. They just don't give us a like transcript with our grades. They just say like pass, fail, but you know like the grade that you got in the class. So I think it's really great for people who are just looking to go into GP. But I think that my grades will still matter when I apply for residencies.
Yeah. Okay, so you're gonna do probably zoo med residencies, you think, or internship residency stuff? Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
that's my goal.
Yeah, that's super cool. Yeah, the flipping is interesting because like when I did the DVM and the PhD, I kind of like not butt heads with my PI sometimes, but my thinking was more clinical, so it was like bigger picture. You know, PIs are way more like intense focus. So if one number is like off, then they just think, and I see that actually in my current work now, where some of the clients see for the blood work like one number off, they think it. I'm like, no, there's like a range, like. You know, you have to look at like the bell curve, and so I don't worry about if it's like a titch above outside of like normal. So just that whole thinking is interesting.
Yeah, and like I was co-PI'd at the start of my PhD, and like it was kind of like strange communication wise for me because like I kind of had a main PI that was like my co-PI that I would mostly communicate with, but then I kind of had to still communicate with the other guy. So it was just like, it made the dynamics a little bit more complicated, but we ended up shifting to just having my one main PI, and she's like my like savior. Like she's just like, I kind of a mentor for me. What I need is just someone that like tells me I'm doing a good job and I got it and I'll keep doing it, you know? But I don't need like a super intense like hand holding experience, but yeah, I mean, finding the right mentor is so crucial for your graduate experience, and it can be really challenging to navigate.
Yep, 100%. Yeah. So it's so interesting. I mean, it was a lot of work and a lot of school, but I like what each program has kind of taught me. One, the clinical, and now the more bigger picture. The one thing that it did not teach me was how to manage people, and that's what I'm figuring out how to do now. Is I now manage 2 departments of different sets of people, and holy cow, that is a whole nother. If I can figure out how to manage, I have the science, I have the clinical, I'll be like indestructible at that point. But holy cow, managing people is something insanely difficult.
I mean, I think the DVM PhD complement each other a lot, and that kind of like, because with the PhD, a lot of times like you're just like, you're already working on a project, and you're like, you know, you're kind of, it's like a real life, it's like a pseudo real world job sometimes, where like you have to do these research projects and stuff like that, but you're still like in school.
So,
but like for mine, I wrote like most of the grants that funded my research, and then like I had to manage people too. For like, I had undergrads that would take care of our collection, and so I had to like manage people like coming in, and when things would go wrong, like trying to think about the best way to like address that. But yeah, I definitely will need more managing experience.
I think that should be just some sort of lecture class on if that's, because you're kind of graduate and you're kind of expected to be in that like figurative role. And I mean, thankfully, like my boss supports me, everything like that, but wow, I did not think it would be as hard as it was managing. So I think that's something vet school could do a little better, maybe. Hindsight's 2020, but you know, we have to manage people more out.
We have our professional skills class, and I think that a lot of it is like we have like client actor interactions. But we do talk a lot about like a lot of different things, but of course it's like the class where people can kind of get away with skipping. So maybe the people won't actually get as much, but I always go. So
it could be put in.
Do you have any advice about management?
I'm learning as we speak. I had some huge blow up on Thursday, Friday next week that I've been stressing about all weekend. I have a meeting about it tomorrow. Because I'm kind of finding my own way with it. Like one of my teams now, I kind of let them work it out. They're not working out, so now I got to go in and micromanage them, and I hate doing that. But I've gotten to the point where I'm going to micromanage every little thing they do because they've caused me that to that point. And so I'm learning it as we speak. So as far as advice, it's like want good people around you, have like more experience than you do, I would say. And then you kind of find your own little flair, but also will change because I manage two different departments. I manage the necropsy department and the vet department. And so it's two different sets of people and they work very differently with each other. So I have to change my style for one than the other one.
Yeah. I feel like it's just like you have to just find yourself and figure out how you work in that group and then just give yourself grace. Like, don't be too hard on yourself and things like that.
That's kind of exactly where I'm at. I'm more nice, like I'm more kind of relaxed, kind of low key, but I've had to turn it up a notch with the other ones where I feel like I'm kind of a monster because I've gone so a little bit angry, you know, not angry, you know what I mean? Like firm with them. I've had to be.
Yeah. And sometimes it's like when you're such like a hardworking person and you care so much about what you're doing and that's not really met with the people you're working with, it can be really frustrating. And like I can totally empathize and like respect people that just want to come and they want to do their job and go home and live the rest of their life. But like, I mean, as someone that has, you know, really gone after my passion, it sometimes is hard to be met with that like attitude where it's like, I'm just here to get paid.
That's exactly it. I mean, you've been your academia for all I've known's academia. Academia is like not real world a lot of times that they think. So like in real world stuff, it's like totally different. You're working with totally different set of people that, you know, don't always have like quote unquote the professionalism that we kind of deal with in academia. So like, that's been a huge change for me too, because all I've ever known is academia.
Yeah. I feel like for me, I'm excited to get into a different environment.
It's been a lot of fun, really fast paced, like it's almost like I never liked emergency med, but it's like that kind of pace where every day it's something different, whether it's medical cases or managing people, something like that. It's like, you know, but you get used to it, I guess, you know.
Well, I mean, I think like my one of my PIs, we're talking about, you know, just like what I'm gonna do after and things like that, and she said, you know, my first job doesn't have to be the job. Like I can always get a job and change it later too. So I think that's also somewhat of a good mindset to have, is not feeling like you're trapped. Like you can always usually shift. So
100%. Yeah. Have to get in that mindset too. The job, and this is my first, you know, big kid job at a school. It's going to be very, very helpful once I figure out, because it's so different than what I've ever. I mean, I've had, you know, CRO kind of experience here and there, but you know, I'm dealing with like equipment and like audits and like a lot of things I've never really been exposed to. Now I'm a manager or boss and have to figure it out. Like, I think our EHS guy like 2 weeks in or whatever, and so I have to now like manage all the chemical stuff in the necropsy department. I'm like, okay, let's see. I'm gonna have to use the internet or something. I don't know. You know, it's like you just have to figure stuff out. But once I'm got my bearings for a couple of years, I'll be able to kind of do, you know, I'll have the skills to do kind of whatever. So it's hard now, but I think if you just put yourself, you know, through that where you're still kind of learning, then you can apply those skills and be indestructible with anything you do.
Yeah. I think it's really hard because it's like, it's so interesting how I feel like our mind, like our mental space, our head space can just be so different. Like sometimes I feel like I'm so at peace. But then sometimes when I'm actually going through something, I'm just like, I can't. It's like, you know, I didn't really understand like the seeing red reference. But it's like, now I get it. I'm like, okay. So like seeing red is like when you're just like so angry. You just can't think about anything but your anger. But I practice a lot of yoga. So I try to find my breath.
That's what I need to do. That's what I did last week, Thursday, Friday. I was seeing red in some meetings I had to have with them. And then yesterday I was just completely in like a weird state, like almost a depressive kind of state, because I was just so angry about everything.
You're so mentally fatigued from being angry.
I think that's why I was so fatigued today. Like my body's just, I don't think it's sick. I think it's just from so much frustration that was built up yesterday about people.
Yeah, and when we do like what we're passionate about, like I feel like it's so hard not to be so emotional with our work.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a paper in review right now, and when I get my revisions back, I know it's probably gonna like be a dagger to the heart because I'm like, what do you mean? Like,
Yeah.
this is my whole heart and soul right here. Like,
Yeah.
you didn't like it.
100%. Yeah. Or people that you know, working with people you thought you trusted, but you can't, you know, just you just have to get amendable to it too. But yeah, paper, same thing. You know, you pull your work and then somebody looks at it, it's like, this is I felt I had to go through with grants. Like I wrote some grants, like wrote an R21 to the NIH, and they're like, this is crap. And I'm just like, all right, you know, I spent years working on this, but it's the
Like,
name
well,
of the
I thought
game.
it was pretty good.
Adversity is such a needed skill. Like it's so much needed to be able to be flexible and averse to anything. And I don't know, that's something you just develop with hardship or
We just gotta go through it.
Yeah.
But have a support network and have resources. Almost like make a little like checklist of like when you're faced with adversity and you're seeing red, do these things. Like take a deep breath. Like
it's different for every person.
Walk away. Yeah.
Manage that. But
yeah, that's part of growing up.
Yep. 100%. Where are we at? Oh, we're hour 15. Yeah. See, it goes
by.
Flies by. Is there any other big topic? Usually, this is when I kind of start wrap it up. Is there any other topics you wanted to hit that we didn't?
Well, I kind of wanted like to maybe just talk about like general disinfectants and like biosecurity in that regard, and just because I think one of the biggest main pathogens in the pet trade that's been around for the longest that people talk about is like Cryptosporidium. And that pathogen sucks because it's so hard to kill. It's, you know, because you have to use like 6 to 8% hydrogen peroxide for the most part, or like, you know, obviously heat at above 200 is going to be effective. So like maybe steam cleaning or something like that. But, and then with like fungal pathogens, they're a little bit easier to kill, like 10% bleach or like 3 to 5% bleach is a little bit more effective. And then, so I think that's like a good wrap on things, is just kind of like taking into account what disinfectant you're using and what it actually can kill. And I think having your kind of intake, so like when you're quarantining, when you're setting up a new enclosure, maybe go ahead and bring in that 6 to 8% hydrogen peroxide to disinfect it, and then obviously disinfecting it with that stronger disinfectant after you're moving an animal out. But then maybe like spot cleaning or using more like chlorhexidine or like rescue, which is just like a more dilute hydrogen peroxide that I think is like in low doses generally safe to use with animals, obviously, because it's a veterinary disinfectant. But I think just like taking that into mind of like what pathogens you're working with and what can actually kill those things, or like what pathogens you're concerned about. But luckily, I think viruses are pretty easy to kill. But there's never been a paper on disinfectants for serpentiviruses, so we don't really know.
Yeah, this is super helpful. So you would maybe do upon entry like a bleach hydrogen peroxide mix, and then for everyday stuff, or whether in quarantine you do that everyday stuff once they reach past quarantine, do chlorhexidine or rescue.
And then for me, it's like I do my stronger disinfectants when I have a new animal coming in, when I'm setting up a new enclosure, and then I use bleach mostly to disinfect like food bowls in between feeding. But if I had like an animal in quarantine, I would most likely use hydrogen peroxide at 6 to 8% in that case. And I think like you can use bleach and hydrogen peroxide, but definitely not mixing the two. So bleach and then rinse and then hydrogen peroxide, because I think there could be some volatile interaction.
Acid base.
Which some people, you know, the lay audience, like the general keeper, probably doesn't think about those things, and maybe they know, like bleach and hydrogen peroxide are both really good disinfectants, but I mean, I think there's always that like trade-off of like how harsh of a disinfectant do you want to use, but also like you have to be careful with live animals and stuff like that.
100%. Letting them air dry as much as you can, I think.
Yeah. And I think like, I don't know, I've heard of some breeders having like dishwashers for their food bowls with the geckos. And like if it gets up to a certain temperature, then like it's fine. I think, you know, I don't think anything really survives over 200. So like when I get new like wood and new substrate, I usually bake it, but I think I might be I'm like kind of, you know, very OCD, like crazy about these things just because I read about infectious diseases all the time and it gives me nightmares. But I mean, anything from outside definitely needs to be baked or disinfected because, I mean, the fungus, like the group of fungal pathogens that are mostly afflicting our reptiles are, they live in soil. Like there's been eDNA or environmental DNA studies that have detected OO in like soil outside. So it's like if you're getting dirt from outside or you're getting wood, then you know there could be a chance that you're bringing something in. But obviously, it's like I love the more bioactive based enclosures too. So
100%. Yeah, you just have to be a little more patient, baking in some stuff, and you know, be safe than sorry type of thing.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I really enjoyed talking with you, and thanks for having me.
This was super fun. I really, really enjoyed that. I learned a lot from biosecurity and then DVM PhDs. Very fascinating how flipping it kind of, you know, you can kind of see what it does to your follow-up training, you know.
And if there's anyone in the audience that ever has any questions, they can always message me on my Instagram account. Because I've talked to a lot of people just in general about like those that are interested in grad school, like doing research with reptiles, like figuring that out, like what a career would look like, or, you know, if they're interested in a dual program or they're just interested in vet school, or you are a keeper and you want to maybe take some more considerations into your practice about, you know, being more disease pathogen conscious and, you know, increasing your hygiene and your protocols there.
100%. Yeah. And then looking into that program too to become certified. I think that would be a fantastic way.
Healthy Trade Institute. I think it would be, I think it's so cool. And I definitely think it's a little bit easier with the amphibians because it's like we have our 3 target pathogens that are pretty set, like the Batrachochytridium or I have a paper in that. I need to be able to say it better, but it's so hard to say. But it's and then ranavirus. But it's a little bit easier to do that because it's like in general those are the main things we see in amphibians, but in reptiles there's so many different things, and unlike for certain species there's like more specific viruses that we have to look for. And so just continually growing, and like I think if there's keepers that have had issues with diseases, it's really important to be transparent and like, you know, talk to someone that maybe is more on the research side of things so we can like describe those different types of outbreaks and like, you know, figure out different types of management practices so that we can avoid it in the future.
Yep.
We all want to protect what we do. And it's not like this is USDA regulated, so it brings in some issues with like biosecurity and stuff like that, because it's really up to the person to have that biosecurity in practice because there's not a lot of legislation about it.
Yeah. It only helps us as keepers and breeders to keep healthy animals, so there's no, you know, negative to it. So
and I'm like I love the whole New Caledonian side of things, and I just like I'm always wondering like what people have seen. Like I heard on a random podcast some guy got 2 crested geckos from a big show and they had cryptosporidium, but luckily he was quarantining them, but they died, or one of them died, the other one was rehomed and treated and was pet only, because crypto can be really hard to actually treat, and like once it becomes clinical it's like there's no going back. It's a lot on the leopard geckos, and then hog noses is like a huge thing with those guys. 100%. So. And that's why we have to do the 6 to 8% because of cryptosporidium. Like mostly everything else is fine with bleach or maybe a little bit like, you know, the chlorhexidine. But yeah, like I'm just really curious, like what is out there in crested geckos or like other species, and like what hobbyists have been seeing and experiencing, but maybe haven't been like published.
Yeah. We won't know until people start getting some poop and looking at it and do PCR and all that. So it'd be fun.
I wish we had like the pan fecal PCR as we do for animals. I'm like, it's so fascinating. They can have one fecal sample and test it for over 20 different. I'm like, the amount of work that had been put into a panel like that is insane.
It's insane. Yeah, hopefully we can get there with the reptiles. It'd be super nice to be able just to ship it off.
There is a pan PCR coming out for the fungi.
Okay.
One day. So hopefully we can easily test everybody for those. But like, it's like with that and crypto, it's like, it's really hard to figure out what to do when we have positives because they can be so hard to treat.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of times you just need to have a like a positive population that is in isolation, or sometimes like maybe need to think about culling or things like that, which is really not a fun thing to do.
Yeah.
So, cool.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Well, I put your Instagram link down below, and I'll shoot me the link of the organization site. I'll put it in the.
He sent me a bunch of links.
Yeah. Well, I can edit it after and put them in there. So yeah, just send them to me.
The main website though is healthytrade.org.
Healthytrade.org. Okay.
And their mission, I think, is really pioneering when it comes to promoting a healthier industry.
Cool. I'll put them in the description below then. Cool.
Yay. Thank you.
All right. Have a good evening, and good luck with school from home tomorrow. Should be a lot of fun.
Yeah. Thank you. Take care. Have a good one.
You too. Bye.
Bye.
All right. Great episode, guys. If you have any questions, reach out. Really enjoyed that one. Share it with friends so I can get those views up. But yeah, really, really enjoyed that episode. So I hope you guys have a great week and see you on the next one.